2 weeks ago, I went camping in the White Mountains of New Hampshire for the first time since high school. And admittedly, in the 20 years since high school, the only camping I've really done is at music festivals. But we were going to be up at my parents' cabin, and there's this trail there that I've hiked a million times, and on this trail, there's this little spot down by the river, kind of a mile in on your way out, that I've always wanted to camp at. And I've tried multiple times, but the weather never cooperated, or there was somebody already there using the campsite. And this is not car camping. You can't reserve this. This is just the Franconia National Wildlife. You can camp there if no one else is there. But it was a Tuesday night, and the weather looked like it was going to be great, and kind of the stars were aligning. And I thought, this is the perfect opportunity to go do this, finally. And so I packed up equipment. My husband and I packed up equipment, and we made a special trip to Starbucks because one of the things is that even instant coffee tastes way better if you're sitting in a camp chair. So I was thinking, if I was sitting in a camp chair next to a fire by a river, it would really elevate the whole situation. So we made a special trip to Starbucks to get that. And we went up to the cabin and we got ready. And we checked the weather so many times because I had said if there was even a whisper of a hint of a chance of maybe it raining, we weren't going. Because the only thing worse than rain camping is rain camping with a 3-year-old. And we were planning to bring my son. And so we kept checking the weather, and it looked good. And I felt relatively confident. And most of my confidence came from my high school. I went to a super outdoorsy boarding school in northern New Hampshire. And I should explain that I very much wanted to go there. I was not sent away. But the first thing you did when you got to the school was freshman orientation was camping. They took you out in the White Mountains for 3 days, and you camped and you met your classmates. And then junior year, they had something called Outback, which was not required, but it was required. Everyone had to do it, and it was 10 days of winter camping your junior year in March. And 3 days were solo. They would literally take you to a campsite, and they would leave you with a tarp and your pack and your snowshoes and a little coffee can that had a loaf of banana bread and a jar of peanut butter and some Boghosian raisins and 5 other things and 3 matches. And they'd be like, see you on the other side. And I felt like if I could do that, I could do one night of camping with my 3-year-old. So we packed up, we headed out, and we were killing it, guys. We got there early. There was no one at the campsite. We set up. We got our tent. We got our camp chairs by the fire. We hiked all the way up to this beautiful waterfall. We swam in the waterfall. We hiked back. It was 4 miles round trip. My 3-year-old barely complained. We sang songs. I didn't have to carry him. I taught him how to play 20 questions, which he almost got the concept of. And we had a blast. We got back to the campsite right around dinner time. We made a fire successfully. We cooked hot dogs on sticks. And even though they got a little bit of black on them, he ate them, which was huge. And so, of course, I got on Instagram to gloat about this, as one would. And as I'm doing so, my phone dies, which is fine because I've brought a backup battery and a cord, and I had tested it the week before in the backyard when we'd practice camped. And I plug my phone in, and it does nothing. So I turn to my husband, and I say, how much battery do you have left on your phone? He's like, I don't know, 11%. And so we plug his phone in, and it does nothing. And he goes, okay, it's going to be fine. We don't need technology. I'll just turn my phone off in case of an emergency. So we're doing marshmallows, we're having a great time, and all of a sudden we hear thunder in the distance. And my husband says, you know what, I'm going to turn my phone on just real quick and check the radar. I'm like, okay. So he turns it on real quick, and he's like, oh yeah, there's a cell, it's tiny, it's way below us, but I can see why we might hear it. We said, great, turn the phone off. And as he turns it off, it does the death rattle, dies completely. And we're like, it's fine. We get in the tent. We put my son in between us. We're snuggling up. He immediately falls asleep because I don't think he's ever walked 4 miles before. And it gets dark, and suddenly the thunder's getting closer, and then there's lightning, and then it starts to sprinkle, and then it starts to rain. And I say to my husband, are you sure on the radar? And he's like, I don't know. My phone wasn't on very long. I didn't really look at that time thing on the bottom. That might have been earlier. And I was like, did you look at the location? He was like, no. And we'd come from Massachusetts, so it very well could have still been at home. And I'm like, okay, it's going to be fine. The storm comes in hot and heavy, and about a half an hour into the storm, I have to pee. So I look out of the tent, and everything we left outside is floating in about 4 inches of water. Our shoes, our wood for my morning coffee fire. And now I'm realizing that the river's pretty far below us, but the water's coming from above, and how much water would wash us into the river? And I'm freaking out, and thunder's loud, and we're over my son's sleeping body. My husband and I are squeezing each other's hands every time the thunder comes. But eventually the storm rolls away. We wake up in the morning. The sun is out. Our campsite is a devastation of wetness. I have to have a fight with my toddler about whether or not he will hike the mile back in his wet shoes or his pink Crocs. He elects for the Crocs, which is fine. And I definitely did not get to have my quiet coffee moment. But I would do it again, although I would bring a different charger, and I would be the one to check the radar.